All right, everybody, welcome to Behind the Bar with your host, Danny Johnson, where we take a look at your favorite dry bar comedians, get inside their minds, see what they're thinking, what they're doing, how they're doing. Um, Behind the Bar is sponsored by RX Solutions. If you're underinsured or uninsured, if you go to rxsolutions.online, you can get up to 75% off your next prescription. Please do so. My guest today is an old friend whose special password protected, his dry bar special password protected, very successful. Is that what it is? Yeah.
It is, but I'm putting down RX Solutions. I'm underinsured, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
rxsolutions.online. His dry bar special password protected. I watched it again. Hilarious, very successful. But this is Tim Wilkins is with us right now. If you're watching the video, TV host, bodybuilder, event host, actor. He's got like I don't know. You have 3 albums, I think I saw, or 2 albums out there.
One that SiriusXM has not been playing enough.
Okay.
But for my friends that have been on Sirius for years that have their stuff recently pulled offline, I will not complain and let them keep playing the other 3.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's my pleasure to have you here. Not only have we've met several times, but it's been so long, and I want to refresh your memory a little bit. You booked me many moons ago.
Oh, wow.
At a play, I was just starting to become a feature act. So we're talking, I don't know, early 2000s maybe. I want to say it had something to do with green and a lizard.
Geckos.
Okay. It was, well, I don't know where that was. Sarasota.
It was in Sarasota. We had that comedy club for 10 years. It was a Sunday night that tied into the Friday, Saturday night in Fort Myers.
Okay.
For a while, we had a Wednesday and a Thursday. They were equally as rough. But Geckos started out as this typical Sunday night, turn off the football game and make everybody mad comedy night that ended up having countless guys from the Tonight Show and eventually a Letterman and guys that went on like Daniel Tosh and just countless names for this little Sunday corner wings and beer bar.
Yeah.
That was a great place to meet comics and make friends.
And you gave me a shot. I'll never forget. I remember what the stage looks like. I don't remember much else, but because I remember how huge that was to, in my head, be like, okay, do I really have 30 minutes plus if something goes awry? And you gave me that shot, and I must have done it every time I probably did Fort Myers. I connected it somehow.
You did, and then we talked over the years as you kind of said, all right, how do I actually make money at this?
Right.
How do I get clean and find corporate work? And we spitballed for the next 20 years after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was always clean, but I did curse a few, a few jokes, but then I just kind of took it. It wasn't true to me. You know what I mean? Were you always a clean comic?
Not the first few years. And I think
Right.
if I'm running for office, they're going to find a CD or 2, and it's going to keep me from outside of city council. I mean, state office, no, not going to happen. Right. There's some edgy stuff in there. And even I was never dirty. Like, actually, I tried to do a dirty show with a couple of the dirtiest guys out there, like a Doug Stanhope. Right. And Doug put his arm around me at 12:07 when they pulled me off stage and said, "You got no filth, kid. Take a breather."
Yeah, it just wasn't me. It just didn't feel right, And I even took some of my favorite bits that other comics remember. I don't remember anymore. I don't do them because they're either too mean-spirited or whatever. And I'm like, I remember doing that. I wonder if I should bring that back and clean it up a little bit.
There's no cleaning up mean. I've tried to do that with some of these bits, and there's some good youthful bitterness in there that I just don't have anymore. I am happily married now, and it's ruining my act.
Right. So for your dry bar special, like I said, I watched it again. I watched it when it first came out, and I love it. Walk me through your experience with dry bar. Maybe not so much the details about how you got it, but your preparation for it. Because I think your special was 36 minutes. Same with mine. Rough. Now they're doing much shorter ones. They're doing the 20-minute one. So how do you pick your set? You have more than 36, obviously, minutes of material. But
I wanted to pick the cleanest. Well, they told me, and I don't know if this was your experience as well, but I was fairly early on. And talk about a dream come true. So one of the things I wanted towards the end, and I feel like I'm near the end of my career. People say, where are you in your career? It's not the end, but I can see it from here. It's right. A clear vision. I wanted a special. And as much as I had CDs out and SiriusXM had been good to me, I I wanted a clean special too. The more I did it, I wanted to be respected for that. And when Dry Bar came along, I was so excited. But they would send out this little animated video
Yeah.
that told you what Dry Bar clean meant.
Right.
And I really was vicious. Like, I've watched other comedians during that season and then for the next 3 seasons and thought, wow, those guys made it. And some other guys that have gone on that did it, that if anybody loves their Dry Bar special and looks them up, they're not Dry Bar outside of that confine of the Dry Bar walls.
Yeah.
So I wanted mine to be the squeaky clean family material that families could sit around and watch and laugh and have a good time. And I was really vicious in my editing process. I'm an old school notebook guy. I see these you young kids in your computers. I got notebooks all over the hotel bed, just ripping papers and writing.
Yeah. And my favorite with doing that is I'm sure you've had the same satisfaction as you find an old joke that you maybe forgot you had or you don't do anymore and you make it better. So it almost becomes new again. You put it back in your act.
I'll be 54 this year. I find old jokes and go, wow, that's mine? That's funny. I like that joke.
But your special first, I think it was your very first bit. I love. I think it was about Timmy, the name Timmy. Oh. And I have a fascination with names. I think because my name's Danny Johnson, which is the most. I might as well be John Smith, right? Brian Brown or somebody like that. Danny Johnson sounds like your unemployed uncle on the couch. That's who Danny Johnson is.
You know? Oh no, Danny Johnson will always have work. But Danny Johnson will always have somewhere to go, somewhere in the middle to upper management. Everybody likes Danny Johnson. Everybody's got a fundraiser for Timmy. Timmy's never the guy when it's 4th and 1 that they put him in. Timmy's the guy in the hospital when it's 4th and 1 and they go, win this for Timmy. We'll try to get the trophy to him before he dies.
Win this for Timmy. You have a strong name, the Wilkins part. It could be, I always try to guess someone's, not guess, I make up their career based on their name, you know? So Tim Wilkins is very strong. So you could be Tim Wilkins, attorney at law, or Tim Wilkins, Action 4 News.
That's been part of a career. And I kind of grew into the voice and I was so excited to be Tim Wilkins live from CBS.
Right.
Oh, cool. All right. I can do that.
I love the voice change. That's fantastic.
I wish it was more ethnic because I love reporters now with I'm Juan Los Vaqueros from CBS.
Right.
Where'd that come from, Juan?
Right. We had I had a news reporter friend here in the Jacksonville area many years ago, and he was one of those side of the street reporters. You know, there's a scene of the accident, he's there, and there's cars whizzing by, whatever. And his sign off was always something like, I'll make up his name. You know, I'm Brian Smith, News for Jax, and there was always this pause, right? So we dared him every time we saw him to how many seconds could you pause without getting in trouble in between your name and the news.
And what did it get up to?
It was 6, I think.
Oh, that's dead air. That's classic.
That's a lot. Yeah. And he did the whole head. Like, I'm Brian Smith. And he just held his head. News for Jax.
In the studio, they go, we've lost the feed.
Right. I'm surprised they didn't cut him out of it. You've been a host and on TV on both sides of it. I'm terrible. I've done the morning shows, the local morning shows, whether it's Jacksonville or elsewhere. That's a real tough thing for me to, it almost like they're not listening. They're reading the teleprompter, the next question. You throw a joke and they're, you know, kind of nod and I never do well with those.
When I hosted, I had a show in CBS for a couple of years and the other host wanted nothing to do with the comedians. They were scared to death because they'd be like Carl LeBove, you know, rest his soul. Took all the things that were on our middle table during the segment, threw all the stuff on the floor and jumped across the table.
Wow.
And did his turtle bit where a turtle's running away from traffic. And the girls would come unglued. And I loved it. Bobcat, the other host and I were in some kind of a fight off camera. And then we go live on screen and they go straight to an ISO shot on Bobcat. Bob goes, they're fighting, you guys. It's really scary here. And it was my favorite segment to have the guys on, but you just got to come in prepared and know that they're probably just duds.
Yeah. Like, I think I did some silly joke. I told him as soon as we started, I'm like, I can't, I'm so nervous doing these things. They say the camera, I'm self-conscious. The camera adds 10 pounds. There's like 4 cameras here. So what is that? 60 pounds. And he just blew right past it. So Daddy, you're, I was like, what?
No, that's funny.
Yeah. But he just kind of looked at me and was like, all right, well, you're a dry bar special. So what did you kind of see from the success of your dry bar special? Obviously, we have the obvious. We get these great clips, super nice video quality, right? But did you see it kind of open up maybe a door or two?
A door or two, and then when I set out to do it, I wanted to connect with a lot more people, like you would hope in a special.
Yeah.
And I got a ton of really cool emails from people
Yeah.
that just said it was so refreshing to be able to just laugh and not be concerned with my family there. Or I watched this with my mom. I've got kids that randomly, I coach sports. I coach girls weightlifting, and I'll be at a meet, and one of the other coaches will walk up and say, one of my kids think they saw you on a comedy special. And I'll go over and shake the kid's hand and go, man, it's so cool to meet you.
Yeah.
And to know that you've actually crossed a lot of age ranges, and everybody just had a good time. And that's really what we hope as comedians. Pay us and have a good time and go tell other people.
Yeah, because now it's on Peacock, it's on Amazon, it's on a lot of streaming platforms. They've really expanded it quite a bit.
I was crazy. I woke up one morning to a bunch of texts when they started streaming it, and people had done screenshots and said, you're on TV, but they screenshotted it wrong, like I was a Sunday preacher. And they snapped the wrong station. Why is a ministry playing it's a clean special, but they're taking some artistic liberties with my show.
That's hilarious. When my special first came out on VidAngel, so that's that streaming platform that they have too. They have the kind of movie boxes you can scroll through, and I was right next to Passion of Christ. That's quite a leap from my fast.
My show has
material.
Become penance.
Right. From my fast food material to Passion of Christ.
And we're gonna watch my show every Easter. Thank you.
Right. It just plays right after. That would be great if they're playing that and mine just kicks on right after.
Oh, and now promoting Danny Johnson's special, Jim Caviezel.
Right. Your special took us through not only generational challenges, your kids, or kids.
I've gotten a new one since then, but my 2 older ones did it as fast as I could write it. I miss the fact that they're grown up now, and writing them older is just not funny. Yeah. But from 9 to 17, they were gold, Jerry. Yeah. Gold.
For real. I have a 16-year-old, and my son is 16, and this is weird to say, I consider her my daughter, but she's my ex-stepdaughter. So I raised her from 3 to 16 or 17, right? So now I'm divorced and I still have a relationship with her, but I don't call her my ex-stepdaughter, although that would be funny to me.
Yeah, probably not to her or the authorities.
Right. But your bit about going to Victoria's Secret with your daughter, and it just hit home with me because I know how, look, when I'm out with my daughter, I see she's 21 now, and guys look at her and I'm like, it's a boiling rage, but at the same time, I want to embarrass her to be funny. And your bit just brought me back to the times I've spent with her,
I have my daughter, my older now is going to be 24, and she was 15 when that happened. Yeah. So the bit's got a little age on it, but it was flawless the way it went down, exactly the way I wrote it, with me flipping around in the panty pile going, oh, look over here, there's who would wear these? This is like an eye patch for a broken pirate. And she's, Dad, put those down. And some guy is looking at her, and she is at that vulnerable thing where she's mad if they're looking and she's mad if they're not.
Right.
She's looking at me, is that guy looking at me? Or is he not looking at me? What is wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. Stop talking to yourself. Yeah. That's what's wrong with you. But yeah, that whole thing with there being no days of the week panties at Victoria's Secret, it's not Monday through Friday, because that reminded me when she was little and she's got Thursday and I come in and I was, so what are you wearing? I'm wearing my days of the week panties. You've been off by 3 days for a week. You need to reset your panties.
Yeah.
And she's just, they did so much so often so fast that there's days I'd forget to write it down. Yeah. And then my oldest would come in and go, we're going to see your show. Are you doing that thing that I did last week? No, I forgot about that.
Thanks for the
And
reminder.
yeah.
When my son was going from pull-up diapers to underwear, he would just be around his mom and his sister, and I would be traveling a lot for comedy or other work or whatever. And I come home one day and he goes, Dad, my panties. Like he would, and for like a year, he referred to his underwear as panties. I'm like, well, you have to stop.
You have to stop talking about your panties.
Right.
My oldest, when he was about, speaking of geckos, he was about 6, maybe 5 or 6. He said, I want to go to the comedy club with you. And I take him and I said, all right, you sit in the back with the pinball machine with the other comedians, and I'll come back between sets and be with you. I'm only going to do 5 minutes up front. As I'm walking to the stage to start the show, he goes, I want to be with you. And I said, where? So he wants to sit on that corner of the bar and watch.
Right.
Well, 1 minute into my set, he said, I want to come up there with you. And I put him on the stool like a ventriloquist dummy.
Right.
And he leans over like he's Walter. He's Jeff Dunham's puppet. And he said, they're looking at me. Said, they're not looking at you. They're looking at me. He said, I want to get down. Well, he didn't want to get down. He got down inside the bar stool that was on stage, and he's peering out of the bar stool. And I do another joke, and I would try out all my new material there. And he looks at me and goes, that wasn't funny. Why don't you do some of the material that works? And the crowd is losing it. I said, I got to take you on the road with me. He goes, I'm not cheap, and this place doesn't pay. And it was 7 of the best minutes I've had.
That's fantastic. Too bad you don't have video of that. That would have been great.
Yeah, too bad he's not still doing comedy.
Right.
He's making better money.
Right. I've talked to do you get a lot of young comics talking to you or asking a lot of advice about the business or dry bar or both?
I've only had one ask me about dry bar. And he was perfect for it, which really made me happy. I was so glad to hand him off. And I think he just filmed.
Good.
Super kid. I don't know about you. I was always hungry to ask the old guys, how do you create a joke? How do you get a hold of a booker? What do you do between I was an endless array of questions. I'm sure I was the annoying little kid. And this generation didn't want to hear anything. And I got this. I got YouTube. I'm going to put out a podcast and a YouTube and I'm good. I don't need you. All right.
Yeah, it is more rare now to find those guys that you could tell they're still working on their stuff, trying different punchlines or whatever. And those are the guys and girls you kind of go up to and try to get some knowledge from,
Is there someone that you looked up to or that you toured with early on that you said, I'm going to learn from this guy?
Yeah, there's several that taught me a lot. Billy Dardell taught me a ton. I call him my comedy Jedi master. We haven't spoken in a decade, but that's my fault. And I just didn't know how to be friends with this uber successful person.
Yeah.
Because I think that one of the last conversations I had with him, I flew out to LA and he took me on the set of Yes Dear. I have the signed script still hanging up in my office here. And then we hung out for a couple days and whatnot. And, he was talking, we went out to dinner with his agent, his manager. I was just so overwhelmed at the whole thing. And he goes, I said, Billy, it's got to be tough. He's like, I know I got people texting me. I don't know if it was text back then, but emailing me, calling me. He's like, everyone wants to be in touch with them. And then I thought to myself, like, I think I'm just another, am I another one of those, like I didn't, so I just stopped and we've texted occasionally, but in any event, he taught me a lot. He brought me to the Punchline many times, not many, 2 or 3 times to feature for him. In Jacksonville, I always was there for him. And we just hung out and he taught me some of the most valuable lessons about delivering a punchline to the strongest part of the room. And then your taglines to the middle, maybe the right. Then it's like a sprinkler system and you just kind of bring the whole room together and stuff like that. And then other things like Tom Simmons is another one. He taught, he's a wordsmith. So picking the right word, the way it sounds, the way it feels coming out of your mouth, what kind of power it has, and among many other things. But
That's really old school. Tom was one of those brilliant wordsmiths,
Yeah.
and it was about crafting a joke. And now it's just about throwing it against the wall. And, they don't try out new punchlines. If it doesn't work, it was the audience. I'm going to do it till it's dead.
Or make it shockingly vulgar or gross.
Yeah, that's another big thing. You'll see the same vulgarity and gross through lines throughout 4 or 5 comics in one night.
Yeah. What about you? Who influenced you, or kind of were you just kind of set? Tim Wilson's another one for me.
Oh, Tim Wilson. Tim was brilliant. Billy, by the way, I owe an expensive dinner next time I see him. Billy, we were working Side Splitters together years ago, between Yes Dear, some random show that was barely on, and just before he got Mike and Molly, he said, Timmy, whenever anything goes good, I like to get myself a treat. I go out and get a nice dinner and feel like I'm successful.
Right.
So he took me to Burns Steakhouse in Tampa, which is pretty much the nicest steakhouse there.
Yeah.
They've got an entire expensive dessert room devoted to it.
Yeah.
And I know Billy more than anything wanted the company, and I certainly wanted to be with him, but I didn't have the heart to tell him I was so congested I couldn't taste it.
Right.
So we probably spent 400 or 500 of Billy's success dollars on a dinner, and the whole night. Well, this is great, Billy. Best steak I've ever had.
Right.
So I owe him a meal. Jerry Farber, my buddy Carmen Surasillo had been kind of my, he ran that room with me at Gecko's.
Okay.
He's been kind of we've written a ton of comedy together, but he was my business mentor and saying, all right, here's how you contact people and follow up and do this. Comedy wise, Kathleen Madigan, I've learned, I still tour with her, and I've learned so much. Saget, early on, I learned a ton from, and inadvertently. And then there were a couple of Wilson. Tim Wilson was one of those guys. You just learned how to be fearless.
Yeah.
Touring the South was a trip with guys like that. And Tim one night, Tim led to a couple of my best nights and a couple of my worst nights. There was a night in his hometown of Columbus, Georgia, where they booked me and the entire room was there to see him.
Right.
It was his hometown.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got up, somebody in the back goes, "You ain't Tim Wilson?" And I said, "You're not the group from Hooked on Phonics, are you?"
Right.
And when I told Tim, he said, "Bubba, it's a wonder you survived that gig. You should have been shot dead and I'll never see you again."
Yep. He was the first comedian I worked with that was a draw, right? So back in the day, the Comedy Zone in Jacksonville, tickets were $5, $6, $7, $8, and his were like 17 to 20. He's got the record deal. And I'm the MC, and I hosted for him a couple times. And then maybe a year or so later, I'm in the back of the room just coming to see him perform, and I wasn't working with him. And he walks in the bar, he's smoking his cigarette, sits down with his big old hat, Indiana Jones hat. And a couple of seconds go by, and he must have recognized my voice. He turns around, and I'm in front of like 7 other comics, local guys, and he goes, "I know you." He points to me and he goes, "Come sit with me." And it felt so great. And he goes, "I don't know the last name. The first name's Danny."
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah. And we just started, and then he's like, "You need to host every time I'm here." So I don't know that happened, but he just taught me so much. He scared me when he booted someone. I don't know. I don't want this podcast to be about me, but I love telling this story if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
So
Tim's stories are the best.
He's up there. He's closing the show. He's killing it. It's all people there to see him. And I'm the MC. I'm seated towards the exit door, waiting for him to wrap it up. And he's taking his hat off with that comb and slicking back his hair from the sweat. You know what I mean? And there's a table of 4 up front, right dead center front. And he's just trying to do his closing song, packed crowd. And they just started getting chatty, and he stops. And he goes, he gets into him a little bit. And then he starts going into his thing. He's like, "Sir, first of all, you're wearing sunglasses inside." He goes, "Second of all, this table right here, right next to you, spent $17.50 a ticket, plus dinner, plus babysitter, plus maybe a day off work tomorrow. Who the hell knows? They didn't come here to see you." And he goes, "Well, I didn't come here to see you. And you ain't worth $17.50. So Tim had been selling merch the whole week like crazy. He gets a line of merchandise. He whips out this wad of cash on stage, and he goes, "I'm not worth $17.50. I'll give you 20 if you leave." So the guy stands up and goes, "Give me the 20. So he gives him the $20 bill. The guy starts to leave. He goes back into his song. There's 3 other people still at that table. Instead of leaving, he goes back to Jody, who was the bartender at the time, straight back. And he's just standing there in front of the register. And Tim sees him, and he goes, he stops the song again. He goes, "What in the hell are you doing in here?" And he goes, I paid you $20 to leave. And the guy goes, I had to pay my tab. He goes, how much is your tab? And the guy was like, I don't know, 74.18. He goes, I'll tell you what, I'll pay your tab if you take your dumb 3 friends with you. And the crowd, standing ovation. And then these 3 other people, they just get out. And then he just lets the door close. And then Jeff Gordon, whatever's the song he was doing or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm on the start of the stage. I'm like, is this what this is comedy's all about? I'm just an MC.
Oh, he was the best. We were doing a show in somewhere, Macon, Georgia. And he looks at me, he goes, Bubba, I have a bad feeling this night's going to turn into a fist fight. How do you feel about that? He says, you were a Marine. You like to fist fight? I said, if it comes down to that for our very survival, Tim, I'm okay. He goes, all right, then. It goes to fisticuffs. It's me and you against the world. And sure enough, some big redneck gets up and goes, I think I'd like to fight you. And Tim goes, well, I've done 1 hour and 7 minutes. Y'all got your fill. Let's go fight in the parking lot.
Is this the infamous story that I hear about the fight with the customer in the parking lot?
That was one. The other one was Side Splitters. That was the infamous story
Okay.
where all of Side Splitters went out through the side door and watched Tim goes. He made some off-color remark about his wife. He made something and he said, you're a racist. He said, I don't think my black wife would think very kindly of that. She's a lovely woman. She's in the back of the room. And the guy said something that just got to Tim. And Tim said, you know what? I think I'm going to whoop you. And sure enough, he said, all right, y'all, let's go out and watch me whoop him. I'll come back in and finish the show. Right. And sure enough.
What was my favorite bits of his was his uncle.
Uncle BS.
Uncle BS. Yeah. Where were you in December?
November the 7th, 1964. Let me see about that. November your 7th, 1964. I was working the library in Dallas, Texas. Yeah. Me being a Marine, this young Navy fella comes in, tells me he's a better shot than me. I said at lunch, you go home, get your rifle. There's a park across the street. I got a mailbox I like to shoot at. Darn it, the President of the United States didn't come by in a convertible.
I bet you the younger generation would not get any of this today.
None of it.
No. So he was an influence. Saget was an influence. I know you and I, before we started recording, we talked a little bit about Saget. I've worked with him a lot. You've worked with him a lot. He, like I said, he emailed me in December just to wish us. We had been emailing about his Florida dates. I wanted to, he said, keep in touch, see what I can do about getting you to open for me again. And then his last email was a couple weeks before he passed, said, happy holidays to you and yours. And then he says, may your 2023 or 2022, whatever. Yeah, when did he pass? What?
This year, 2022.
Yeah, so may your 2022 be less effed up than your 2020 or something like that. And then he passed, and I knew his last show was at the Ponte Vedra Concert Hall, and I found out that you opened for him. So that must have been, obviously, it's very bittersweet. Right? We both love the guy.
I was destroyed. You thought a close member of my family had passed, but I was hard pressed to find a member that close. Yeah. So we had just done Orlando at the Hard Rock, okay. and he piled into my dressing room. I hear him backstage with his mask on, going, "Where is the other guy here? Is Tim here yet?" And Bob comes flying into my dressing room, takes off his mask, goes, "Man, I've watched so much of your comedy in the last few days. Just brilliant stuff." And I was beside my. It's one of those things. Mm-hmm. You get the nod from the manager to come out and pitch the last inning, right? And it was just a blessing on my comedy. Dennis Miller was another one that had a huge impact on me, and I've worked with him for years, and he was so kind. But Bob that night meant so much, and he said, "I'm going to enjoy working with you this week." And then we talked for about 45 minutes that night, and a little bit after, and then an hour and a half to 2 hours solid, covering the world, politics, family, comedy, prior to the show. And then he was at the hour and a half mark, and I had to drive back to Orlando. I didn't know he was going to Orlando also. I looked over, and he looked just off stage and gave me the nod, like, "I'm not coming down. I'm good. I'm probably gonna do 2 hours."
Wow.
So I didn't even get to really say goodbye, which really was not cool.
He posted his Instagram post from that night's show, I believe mentioned you, but it also said more about how much he's in love with this business again.
Yeah, he was. It was so kind of him to mention me, but at the same time, it opened up a lot of Entertainment Tonight, Inside Edition, Hollywood, all that garbage. They all called and wanted to interview me. And I was halfway through the next day's interviews, and I looked at my wife and I said, this is not my place.
Right.
I'm not, this is up for Stamos or Coulier or Lori Loughlin. This is for the family to talk about. For his wife, who I'm sure Kelly was destroyed way too. There was no statement from her ever, I don't think. Jeff Ross, was one of the hardcore guys that knew him for a lifetime. So I stopped and I canceled all the other interviews.
Yeah.
But it was Kathleen Madigan's the one that sent me the first text and said, "Did you hear Saget passed? I think you were with him." And I said, "No." And I put in Bob Saget death hoax. And it came up with all these different dates where he had supposedly died. And then my phone went nonstop. It was Kevin from Florida Theater.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, the news is horrible. And sure enough, and I turned on the news and it was everywhere for a week.
Yeah.
And it was devastating.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a very weird feeling, right? Because for me, I wouldn't consider him, not friends, right? We don't hang out, Bob and I, but he was so kind and so nice, and he went out of his way. I mean, years ago, he got me spots at the Laugh Factory in LA for no reason, just because I work with him.
And that's who he is. That's who he was. So it's funny. We should say this because we've been in the business a long time. And Dry Bar, hopefully, you're picking clean comedians. Hopefully you're picking a lot of really nice comedians and people with good reputations and good backgrounds. But as long as we've been in the business, there are very, very few people I can say no one has anything bad to say about that guy.
Right.
And he was one of those rare people in any industry, but especially comedy, where there hasn't been a bad story.
Yeah. When I walked in his dressing room in the Florida Theater, when I worked with him, he was watching my Dry Bar special. I guess someone had sent it to him just to say, this is your opener. And it was bizarre. I stepped in and saw over his shoulder, 4 or 5 feet away. And then I kind of stepped back a little bit to see, selfishly, was he enjoying it?
Is he laughing?
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad that, I'd like to think that, we're both very thankful that we got to be blessed with his presence for the short amount of time that we did, working in comedy.
There weren't as many venues. There wasn't an internet when I started. I fell in love with comedy back in the 70s. I used to listen to comedy with my dad on reel to reel, and the 80s rolled around and you had Showtime and HBO.
Yeah.
You had HBO's Rodney Dangerfield Young Comedian specials.
Right.
Saget came out in 84 with what I thought was the most brilliant special. And I'm 15, 16, memorized it start to finish.
Right.
And said, this is the style, this is the pattern, this is the speed. And I was a bad Saget knockoff for a year. So you ask if I was clean, my first 2 or 3 years, I was baby Saget. So it was no bueno. I was definitely I was not me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm guilty of liking a comedian too much, watching him too much, because I appreciate it. But then I have to make sure I don't talk like him.
Oh, I've done that. That's the Dennis Miller. I picked up the Miller patter. There's been a few other guys over the years that people said, that was great. Do you want to give it back to Dennis, or do you want to keep doing it?
And you mentioned Kathleen Madigan a couple times. I'd love to meet her. I've heard nothing but great things, and I think she's hilarious.
The first time we worked together was probably 6 or 7 years ago, and we do 4 to 6 dates, and then she's away for a couple of months, then we'll do 3 to 5. And aside from being a great friend and a great person, she's one of those rare headliner, big draw comics that plays theaters that is working a new set every time you see her.
Wow.
That has the notebook out. And the first time I was working with her, I pulled out my notebook and I was embarrassed. She said, "Oh no, why are you embarrassed?" I said, "Because I've got like 10 to 15 minutes of new stuff I'm going to try." She said, "In a 25-minute set, that's impressive." And she pulled out hers and I said, "Do you have new material?" She said, "Yeah, I'm working a new hour. I'll probably do an hour 20, but hone it down to 45, 50.
Wow.
And every time I've worked with her for 7 years, she's working a new hour.
Yeah. You wouldn't be surprised when I tell you this. When I worked with Richard Lewis, he did the same. Even at this age, this was, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. He would do a set and then go to back to his hotel room. They'd drive him back. He'd listen to it on this little recorder, come back, and the second show would have different punchlines. I was like,
wow.
And because in the back of the room, I thought of a punchline, and when he delivered both of the punchlines for that joke on the 2 shows, they were 1,000 times better than me. I'm like, who do I think I am? But
have you not given some big headliner a punchline and it kills and you go, I I did that.
Yeah.
That's mine.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I've had them, blow me off too when I give them a line. I've had that too, but those are different people.
Yeah.
I get a kick out of making the big name celebrity headliner laugh. In the green room or just before the show or after, just a normal conversation. If you can make, and I'm not being a clown, but if I happen to say something that's funny and they laugh, I'm like, wow, all right, I'm funny.
I tend to sit back with the big name headliners, like the kid in the back seat on their older brother's date. I'll kind of peek over the seat and go, ooh, what do you guys think is funny? And then every once in a while, I'll get bold enough to throw something. It'll be a while before we get that kind of friendly.
Yeah.
Where I think I'm going to make this guy laugh. But like the first time it happened for me was Dennis Miller in about 2002. And I said, what time does he get here? They said, oh, we're going to go get him his hotel when you're about 5 minutes from finished. We'll do a 20-minute intermission. I thought, oh, I was excited for him to see my show. And then I was glad he wasn't going to see it.
Right.
And then I hear the radio crackle. And they said, oh, good. Mr. Miller's here. Where does he want to watch the show? From side stage? And I look over and I see his silhouette. I go, oh no. And then I did a joke, one of the first two jokes. I look over and he's got his hands in his suit pocket, bouncing up and down on his toes, laughing.
Yeah.
And my life was made. I said, that is better than anything I've had up to this point. I just made Miller laugh.
That's fantastic. I love that. What in the Florida theater, when I walked into Saget's dressing room, he visited me in mine, and then he's like, come stop by a little bit. I went in to stop by, and his is much larger than my dressing room, and it has a shower in it. So when we made eye contact, all I said was, as I walked into his dressing room, hey, do you mind if I hop in the shower real quick? and that made him laugh. And then we did that. So when he laughed, I was like, all right, I guess I am kind of funny, I suppose.
Oh, I was blessed with opening for a lot of cool people. And one for about 6 years I was on the road with for about 60 to 80 dates a year was Julio Iglesias.
Yeah.
Enrique's dad. And at one point, we're about a month out from working in Atlantic City. And the guy that manages the room there, the theater, said, hey, I need a tape and a resume and some headshots. And I bristled, I've been doing this 20 years. I'm not sending you a tape. Like, he was accepting me. Well, he wasn't accepting me. He was promoting the heck out of me.
Yeah.
It was all over the lobby. My picture was everywhere. I was in the programs. I didn't know this till I got there. We're coming in on the tour bus and the band is nudging me.
Yeah.
I'm on the marquee. I'm on the theater banner. Glorious. I get to my dressing room. It's the size of my first two homes, with deli platters and drinks and a champagne with a fruit basket and my name on the door. And I get a knock, and it's Iglesias. He's there in his cape, and he goes, hello, team. Hey, Julio. I noticed when my limousine gets here that your name is on the big sign out front. I said, yes, pretty cool, huh? This is very nice. I noticed when I come in the lobby of the hotel, your face is everywhere and they are playing your jokes. Yeah. And then I come to here, and on the walls it says team with a big star. Yes, he says, this must be very nice for you. Yes, it is. Don't get used to it. And he slams the door in my face. And the next night we're in Boston, and I go upstairs to my dressing room, and there's a sign that says opening act, not my name, with an arrow pointing down to a stool, a towel, a water, and an apple. And they were purposely trying to put me back on my place because I was getting too big for my britches.
Right. That's hilarious. Do you find, you've opened for a lot of musicians, do you find that gig to be harder than opening for a comedian?
No.
So let's say, I'm trying to think, you have a whole paragraph of people you've worked with. So pick a musician, one of the ones you've worked with, besides who?
Most recently, Lionel Richie.
Yeah, so you go, they're there to see Lionel Richie do music.
Yeah.
Not there to laugh. Like when they go to a comedy show, it's like mentally they go, all right, we're here to laugh tonight. And then they're here for music. They sit down and then you get up there. I would think it would be harder.
It's kind of like when you see a corporate speaker say something even remotely funny and the room busts up. And you see a comedian say something that's super funny and the crowd goes, we were expecting better comedy. When there's other comedy there, their expectations are a lot higher. When I walk out and start doing jokes, 11, 12, 20,000 people are going, we didn't expect a comedy show.
Yeah.
And the converse is, you're not the better band than the headliner. Like some people, you see a show and they go, oh, the opening act crushed. Yeah. No one's going to compare the comedy to the music. And then they say, oh, the comedy was a nice add-on to the music. So I've only in 24 years of doing bands, only had a couple nights where I went slinking off the stage and said, well, that was unpleasant.
Yeah. Oh, that's great to hear. As I want to say I've turned down. Um,
No. Next time they call you from anywhere, Ponte Vedra, Florida Theater, and then there's about 2 or 3 that I can recommend to you another time that are within an hour to 2 hours of you.
yeah.
It is so much fun to go out in front of 1,000 to 3,000 people, 5,000 people, and just hear that roar. My very first time with 10,000 people, it was Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I didn't know how to work that kind of a crowd. And I actually I was with Charlie Viracola, and we called Carrot Top. And he told me like you were talking about it being a sprinkler, he said, it's a wave. You work the whole stage, throw a joke, let it go up, let the joke crash, and the laugh will come back to you. Then walk to the center stage, then walk to the other side, and walk back and forth the whole time. So everybody gets to be close to you. And then make sure that your timing is with the wave of the laughter.
Yeah, it's definitely my first learning experience. My first ever time at the Florida Theater years ago was just that. It was the sound. It wasn't the comedy club where I'm like bah bah bah. It's a sort of a wave kind of back and forth.
And that's a cool theater. That's a really cool theater.
I
That
love
Florida
it.
Theater.
Elvis performed there. Who, we graced the same stage as Elvis.
Yeah. Who knows? We didn't have the same fun backstage, but we were there.
Right. Look, I don't want to keep you too long, but I want to ask you about one more thing. And please tell me if I'm off base because my research is not complete. I happened to see a post, I believe, of an either upcoming or recent little a tour or a few dates that you did with Brad Stein and somebody else.
Kevin Jackson.
Kevin Jackson. And was it the unapologetic
Comedy tour.
Okay.
Unapologetically American comedy tour.
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Well,
I like the way that I say us, by the way.
No, it's good. I like it. It's taking ownership.
I'm like, tell us about it. Like I have a co-host or someone.
This is the studio audience. Yes. And my sponsor, RX Solutions online.com. Thanks for laughing, by the way. It makes it so much more fun for both of us. It's I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It's anti-cancel culture. Brad Stein is, as his moniker says, God's comic. So you're going to a clean show.
Right.
I work clean and Kevin works clean, but we're not taking the edge off of things. We lean fairly right. I'll go ahead and explain that right away. If you're coming out expecting, Bill Maher, he's not there.
Right.
It's kind of like the when they give a big speech like the State of the Union and there's an address from both sides.
Right.
This is the comedy from the other side, and I can promise you it's funny, because a lot of times they'll say, oh, comedy from that political side isn't funny. Oh, I promise you it's funny.
Right.
I've been working with you. We did a series of dates in 2008. And we've just been kicking around the idea of doing it again. And the more cancel culture kicked in, the more angry we got and said, let's put the band back together and go out and do some dates. And Kevin got it sponsored, and the very first show in Phoenix was sold out to the point they had to rearrange the room twice for walk-ups.
Wow.
And they were it's like I've toured with some politicians kind of as an opening act, which is crazy to even think about. And you go out 10, 15,000 people and you give them the red meat and it's funny. Yeah. That's a blast. So that's what this is really. It's really red meat, clean, anti-cancel culture, anti-woke. Good stuff.
Is there a central location where people can find out more about these dates?
Oh, yeah, the KevinJacksonNetwork.com.
Okay.
We just postponed the Tampa date out of decency to all the folks, all of our, as we say us, all of our friends and family in Florida that just went through this horrible hurricane.
Yeah.
It's just, if there's if there's disposable income, I hope people are donating it to the right groups to give help, not to our comedy show. And we'll come back in February. Probably we're looking at February 9th. We'll be in St. Pete at the Palladium. We've got Chapel Hill, California. We're going back to Phoenix already because I think that's almost sold out again.
That's great.
And it's just so fun to be able to, that was my goal with the Dry Bar. Another goal was to put out comedy that I felt good about doing, that people would want to see. and kind of meet us both in the middle, as opposed to, cruise ship comedy or kind of pandering to the people on vacation. And I wanted more of me in the show.
Right. I think I've never heard of this Jackson fella, but I know Brad Stein's a killer on stage, and you are. So I can't imagine people are getting 3 headliners.
Kevin has been a talk show host, a radio host for the better part of 20 years. And he's funny. I'm not going to take that away from Kevin, but he is kind of the draw headliner where people going, oh, we love that guy from noon to 3. We want to see if he's funny. And then they come and see us and go, wow, he knows some fun comedians. These are good guys.
That's fantastic. I could talk to you for another hour about fitness and bodybuilding. Maybe we'll save that for another episode. But yeah, I would love your thoughts on consistency and taking care of yourself as you get older. But that's maybe for another time.
Another time, and even offline. But I will say, it's been a part of who I am for years, and I turned that into the business side of comedy. So I still have a lot of fun, even making jokes during the shows. But it was really fun, even when I started out. You'd walk into my room, and I'd have a blender, big tubs of protein, a George Foreman grill. And I remember being at the Stardome in Birmingham, and Russ Nagel walks in, crack at 3 or 4 o'clock, coming to grab me for breakfast.
Right.
And I'm on meal 4. And he walks into my room, smoke, and goes, you don't live like a headliner. You ain't never going to move up if you don't learn to party and have some fun. I said, oh, I'm going to move up, Russell. When you die,
right.
I'm going to headline by attrition.
Right. Yeah, his dry bar killed, man. And he's doing cruises, I think, a lot.
Yeah, he's been doing cruises about 10 years. Dude, thanks for having me.
What's that?
Thanks for having me.
What was your name? What is it again? Tim?
Danny Johnson.
No, it's been a real pleasure. Like I said before we started recording, if this is my silly excuse just to catch up with old friends, I'm so blessed to be able to do it. And for you to say yes, and being the first guest to ever respond to me with available days and times, rather than me throwing out 74 days and 80,000 different times that I'm available. Just tell me when you're available.
Just tell me when you're available. No, it's and I wanted to do it as soon as you said go. I said, oh, here's the days and times. Let's get it done. Let's not drag our feet.
It's perfect. But Dry Bar Specials, password protected. You can go to, is it timwilkins.com or do you have timwilkinscomedy.com?
It's timwilkins.com. And I don't know the dates, or I have been horrible about putting up dates, but watch the password protected. I got a Pandora channel if you're someone who likes to listen to comedy on your iPad pods. I don't know what the kids call them, the AirPods. My kids chastise me for calling the wrong thing every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, enjoy. It's been a blast. It's been a great run. I'm glad it's not terribly over, but it's still good to, that's the thing. We talked about this early. You don't get to talk to your friends anymore when you're all headlining the same club. So it's nice to just hang out.
Absolutely. Well, we'll have to do it again soon. Just hang on here for a little bit. But you guys, thanks for listening to Behind the Bar with Danny Johnson, Tim Wilkins. Until next time.